What is up, fine people of the internet? It is just me today. My boy Liberal Steve is laid up. He said that they've been trying to fix his leg that he jacked up, and he is down for the count. There was nothing they could do for him. So, it is just yours truly today, which is fine because I am the one that's really gonna. Basically, the point of the show today is I'm gonna respond to the video, the interview that I did with Vin Armani, formerly Vin Armani, now Cyprian, and Clint from Liberty Lockdown last week. I'm guessing basically anybody who's going to watch this is probably already aware of that, but if for some reason you have been under a rock or not around while since this happened, then go check out that video over on, this is the wrong account. Go over to Liberty Lockdown. I guess you could download it as a podcast as well. I don't do podcasts anymore. I just do everything from YouTube. So you can go check that out before you listen to this. Obviously not if you're watching live, then you're not going to be. You could pause this live, I guess, but I'd rather you participate in the live chat and you can go back and watch what you're talking about later. It was a fascinating talk. Thanks. Is it Marianne or Brandon? Marianne, Brandon. I don't know if this is Marianne talking or Brandon talking, but thank you. Thank you. It was a fun conversation. I really enjoyed it. I thought we got into some really interesting topics. It kind of wound up going a direction that I hadn't planned on, but I think there's probably a reason for it. I believe that if something happened, there was a reason that it happened, and I can't change the fact that it happened, so might as well accept that it happened and look for the good stuff and everything about it that happened. So overall, I thought it was a very productive conversation. I thought that we got into some really good stuff. We talked about the majority of what I would have wanted to talk about in the context of that conversation. There was a few things though that I wanted to go into greater detail about, and I'll be completely honest. I haven't gone back and listened to it. I typically don't listen to episodes that I've been on. I used to. Like every time I would do an episode anywhere for anything, I would go back through and listen to it as soon as I could afterwards and find out. And I just kind of like critique myself and well, that's really it. Just sit there and critique myself. But I don't do that anymore. Part of it's just time. I've got other things that I'm trying to listen to and keep caught up with, and so I just don't have time to re-listen to my conversations. But also it's because I cannot stand listening to myself talk. And this is a thing that plagues a lot of people. And when you're starting out, I would say, especially if you just start doing like interviews or talking in public or on camera or whatever, I would recommend going back and re-listening to yourself, because you'll pick up on stuff that you do when you talk that you don't like that can be corrected. You know, say like figures of speech or something that you use that you don't like, or verbal crutches, and I have some of those, but at this point I just don't really care. I'm just gonna keep them as they are, and it's just repetitions. Just keep doing it, keep talking, keep getting in front of the mic and just talking, and pretty soon it'll become much more like second nature. Carlos says he just jammed the Liberty Lockdown interview. It was great. He says, my wife Vanessa is more religious, and I even showed her parts of being a slave and choosing your master. She thought it was very cool. Excellent. That's great. That was a big breakthrough for me personally. This concept of the fact that you're born into slavery, and you get to choose who you are enslaved to. Once you become conscious of it, you're able to make choices that will determine whose party you're going to represent. And I don't mean party in terms of like a political party. You can do that too, but I mean you get to choose which master you serve, and you get to choose whose standard you'll bear. It's interesting, this thought of a brand. People talk about having a brand. Jason Stapleton, the other podcast I'm on, he talks about branding all the time. And a brand, it comes from people would brand their property, their animals, their slaves. And so your brand is like a signifier of your identity, and specifically your identity with respect to who owns you, whose ideas are you representing, whose movement do you represent, whose organization do you represent. So each of us has a brand. That's part of Jason's message. Jason Stapleton's message is that you just naturally have a brand, and you get to decide what that brand is going to be. You can change it, but you can't remove the fact that you have a brand, because your brand is just it's kind of just a more specified term for your reputation. And you're going to have a reputation no matter what, as long as you know people. If you don't know anybody, I guess it doesn't matter, but that would be nobody is in that situation. So Clockwork Industries, shout out Clockwork Industries, Manufacturing Liberty. I think we're going to get into this this comment that he left that I just absolutely loved it. I screenshotted it and posted it out. So this is the King Pill. We're going to get into that here in a little bit as well. That way I can also point back to this interview if people ask what it means to be king pilled, and what we believe when we take the king pill. So do me a favor. We got 23 people watching now on YouTube. We got 5 likes. So if you could like this video, like the stream as you're watching it right now, and then subscribe to the channel and share the video. We are up to, I think Steven and I aren't going to be able to, we're going to have to work hard if we make it competitive, our bet, whether we're going to get to 1,000 subscribers or get booted off of YouTube. We're going to have to work extra hard to make that happen, because we are now up to 794 subscribers, and that jumped fast. Just like my Twitter following. Go on Pete Quinones and Liberty Lockdown in one day, and have Dave Smith tweet unhappy things at you, and your Twitter following will jump. I think it's basically doubled in the last week, and my mentions are, it's not just like people can have thousands of followers and have them like not be very active. My followers are extremely active. So my mentions are just completely just full all the time, and I'm starting to give up on the idea of ever catching up. So yeah, please like, subscribe, and share. And then I'm gonna put this here in the description for right now. And then I will tell you about our sponsor here. Good old Carlos and Vanessa. Okay, that works there. And then we will really get into this. You guys filled it up in here fast. Let's see. Clockwork says, thanks for the shout out, man. You're welcome, buddy. Yeah, Clockwork Industries is my business for computer components, Manufacturing Liberty, or MFG Liberty, I made for my new business in firearms and autonomy/liberty advocacy. Right on, buddy. I like that combination. You're doing good stuff. Okay. Mark says, the first 20 minutes I was just hoping you'd talk about the martyrdom ledge. Yeah. That kind of, when I heard martyr being talked about, I was like, oh my God, this isn't good. We don't need any martyrs yet. I think it's good to at least have grappled with that idea, though, to confront that concept and think about your relationship to it. Think about how you would feel in that event. But I think right now there's times where martyrdom can be helpful. I think there's times where you can achieve something good through it as long as you're martyring yourself for something worth martyring for. But I think it doesn't just have to be like the things that you're solving for when you're deciding whether or not to martyr yourself is, number one, is this something worth martyring for? But also, is this something worth martyring for right now? Will I benefit from martyring myself for this? So like for me, there's very, very few things that I would consider worthwhile to martyr myself for right now, because I have a wife and a son. And speaking of my son, we did the most adorable photo shoot today. Can't wait for you guys to see the pictures. It's his in and out day. So it's been the same number of days that he's been out of the womb as he was in the womb. And so we dressed him up like an In-N-Out employee and took him to In-N-Out and took pictures of him like on the counter and with eating a French fry. And it was the cutest thing I've ever seen. The kid is just the most photogenic baby I've ever seen. And I'm not even biased in the slightest, he's just the cutest kid. So, but anyway, so like for them, like I have them to care for, to protect, to take care of, and to love. And there's very few things, there's very few situations I can think of where they would benefit more from living in a world where I'd martyred myself for anything than living in a world where I didn't martyr myself and I'm here for them. So that sort of thing informs my behavior. So the types of things that I would be interested in even putting myself in a position where I could get myself, like when people talk about, oh, you got to stand for your principles and do what's right no matter what the cost, or whatever. To me, that doesn't mean like just on principle, if this thing shouldn't get you arrested, do it anyways, and if you get arrested, deal with. Like, I don't understand how making a symbolic stance for something and then spending a bunch of my days in a cage talking to my son through glass would like makes the world better than just taking care of my son, keeping my head down, and keeping out of those kinds of situations. I see my number one responsibility to be providing for and caring for the upbringing of my son. That's like nothing else matters. Nothing else in the world matters outside of that. Everything is stems from that. Everything is downstream from that. He is the most important thing in my life. And so I'm going to do whatever I need to do to be there for him and care for him and protect him and provide for him. And I feel that's my number one responsibility. So I think that people get into some of these conversations about, and I'm not saying the thing with Clint about martyring, I'm applying this to him, because I think we went further with that than we necessarily needed to, because I don't think he was like seriously talking about actually martyring himself. He was sort of using it as a figure of speech, but it's important to drill down into an issue. So I think that people are talking very apocalyptically about the way things are happening right now, and I've done the same thing. I have this instinct to feel like things are apocalyptic, and it's possible things will get apocalyptic, but that's one of those things where if you talk about it, if you can will that into existence by talking about it being apocalyptic. You can make it become apocalyptic by doing that. And now I want to listen to Apocalyptica, the metal band made of all cellos. Anyways, okay, let me get this ad read here, and then we'll continue this conversation, or monologue, I guess. So our sponsors, very good people. I mentioned them already. Carlos and Vanessa. They've got a great little company called Paloma Verde. They sell fantastic CBD products, and I love being able to buy CBD from someone, especially really high quality stuff. But I like even better, and it's even better to buy my CBD from a small family-owned business. And it's even better that family-owned business are like-minded people who see the world approximately the way that I see the world and value the same things that I do. They are willing and eager to sponsor this show, and so I appreciate that. I appreciate them offering us a cut of the proceeds here for if you guys go purchase anything from them. So it's great to support each other, and you guys can support us and them by go to palomaverdecbd.com, use promo code KING. You get 25% off any order over $75. I've been seeing those orders coming through. Appreciate you guys. I still have this one up here, and I almost ran down to replace it with the one that I just got in the mail that's full, but I had to get started with the show. So I've got their gummies right here. This is strawberry lemonade. I just ordered some more strawberry lemonade ones. They're very good. Usually weed gummies are taste like weed, and they kind of like taste like someone took some weed and was thinking about a fruit while they were like putting it together. And so there's like a little hint of a fruit, but these are fantastic. They're very, very good. They're honestly, I would sit and eat them all just like normally, but like I don't know what that much CBD would do to me. So this is one of the things they've got. They've also got some drops. They've got a tincture. They have capsules. They've got muscle rub. They've got basically all your standard CBD stuff. They have dog treats as well. So we actually probably should have ordered some of those, because our coming up on 4th of July here. There's already fireworks in the evenings, and our dog just completely loses his mind when he hears the slightest hint of a firework anywhere remotely in proximity to him at any point at any time. He completely goes haywire. So probably should have gotten some, but you can go get some. They ship fast. I think it got here. They're in Texas, and it got here a couple days after I ordered it. So they're very, very good people. Really, really appreciate their product. Appreciate them for supporting us. So go to palomaverdecbd.com. Use promo code KING. You get 25% off any order of $75. Okay, let me catch up on some of your guys' comments here, and then we'll get back into this. What's up, John Hartman? Can't wait to hear about Porkfest. Yeah, me neither. I can't wait to hear about it either. So Daniel says, are you doing another episode with Cyprian soon? I'm not sure. We haven't talked about it. I'd be happy to. It'd be fun to talk. We could get into some crazy stuff. I would feel more comfortable keeping up in a conversation like that. The political side isn't as interesting to me. The religious side is the side I want to talk about. But I'm in the process of just kind of completely relearning everything that I've known about Christianity from the Eastern Orthodox perspective, and so I feel like a complete noob on Christian doctrine all of a sudden. That I don't know what the whole thing is just like my whole foundation is being fractured and built back up again. So I would want to be able to hold my own in a conversation like that a little bit better. So maybe we get together and talk about some politics or something that I can hold my own in. But definitely want to have more conversations in the future, like the one that we had at the end of the Liberty Lockdown conversation. Let's see. Watch the interview with Pete. Interesting takes that have made me think. Thank you, sir, and keep it up. Thank you, Jinkaza, the Libertarian. That was so. It's funny. We did the Liberty Lockdown interview, and that one's the one that really got people riled up for understandable reasons. But if you haven't listened to the conversation I had with Pete Quinones, go back and do that, because that one it happened just before. So I think everyone's been talking about the Liberty Lockdown one, but the Pete Quinones interview, we got into some stuff there that's really important to me, and we talked about some really interesting stuff. And we're gonna have another one. He and I are gonna get together, and we're gonna build upon what we talked about in the first episode. That reminds me, I'm going to be going on Counterflow with Buck Johnson on Wednesday evening. We're doing a panel. I know Popular Liberty is going to be there. I think Tho Bishop's going to be there. And then Pete, I can't remember who all's there. There's going to be a panel of us, and we're all going to discuss post-libertarianism, this post-libertarian question, how to grapple with these issues. So that'll be Wednesday evening. I don't remember what time it is. If one of you guys is in the chat, you can throw it in here, and that would be great. Because then we would, I can tell you guys exactly when to be there. But holy crap, you guys have a ton of comments here. I just scrolled down a little bit, and it totally, you guys are hopping in here. Okay. Are you familiar with Owen Benjamin? He basically went on this political arc. Yeah, I am familiar with Owen. He's gone a little bit of a different direction than I have. Similar, fairly similar. There's a lot of overlap, but there's some very, very stark differences as well. So, but yeah, he's interesting. People treat him as just a comedian, but he's a very, very insightful guy. And I guess just a comedian is basically, to be a comedian, to be successful, you have to be very insightful. So people downplay. It's like people will elevate actors, but they downplay comedians. And that I think that comedy requires. I don't know. Would I say that comedy requires far more talent than acting? Not necessarily. That's probably not fair. They're different talents. But I think that comedians are they're often the most gifted, the smartest, most agile brain in the room. But for whatever reason, people don't seem to treat him that way. So Owen Benjamin, a lot of people think he's kind of a goofball. And I guess he is a goofball, but he's a very, very smart goofball. Mark says, he said, I'm willing, even if I don't necessarily believe in it. Well, I don't know what that was a reference to. Most California shit ever. Yeah, the In-N-Out thing is definitely the most California shit ever. there'll be some very very good pictures from that, and I'll make sure I shoot them out here. So Vin is in the chat. What's up, Vin? He said a society of people whose number one priority is providing for and defending their family in a sustainable and long term manner is the most preferable society. There it is, right there. That's it. I've been trying to think of a way to express this concept where if you try to do if you're trying how would you say this, if you're trying to get the effect of something and so you try to work on that specific effect, you won't get it. You have to do the thing that leads to that effect to get it. And that's where this whole thing with liberty is, that people are treating liberty as if they're talking about it in just a completely incoherent fashion, where it's become just kind of a meme, like we're spreading liberty. And I tweeted something. I said, who was it that convinced you that liberty is something that you spread? And someone pointed out, fairly, that it's kind of shorthand from spreading the message of liberty. But that shorthand has come to not just be shorthand. People are saying that. They're talking about spreading liberty. Like, our job is to spread liberty. But to spread something, you have to have it already. You can't spread something that you don't have. And even if you're spreading the message of liberty, well, then you need to ask, okay, well, what message is going to be the most persuasive? Because if you're spreading a message, you don't just spread any message. You have to frame it in a specific way. This is basic marketing and sales. You want to make sure that, as Jason Stapleton says, that you're meeting the conversation that they're already having in their head. And the people who are super passionate about spreading liberty are delivering the message that they want to hear to other people with no consideration for whether or not the people want to hear that message. But even worse, I think, than that is the fact that people actually think they've conflated the message of liberty with liberty itself. So they say, like, well, I was reached by when I heard of Ron Paul. And they talk about it like it was a conversion experience, which it was, kind of. But being converted doesn't save you. It's what happens after that. Belief is not, there's a difference between beliefs and thoughts. Thoughts are things that you just think. Beliefs are actions. It's active. If you say that I believe something, it doesn't mean anything unless that changes the way that you behave. That changes your acts. Because when you act, you express a belief, like, implicitly in the action. The act of acting is an expression of a belief, because you wouldn't act if you didn't believe in a reason to act. So belief and action are intertwined. You can't separate them from each other. But thoughts are not beliefs. So if you say that you believe in liberty, but the way that you express that is you join a political party to get involved in electoral activism, then I have to question what you actually believe. Because what you're telling me is that you believe the most important thing to do is to get involved with the state, to work on the territory of the state, to get involved, to throw your hat into the ring with everybody else. I think libertarians that get involved with the LP, I think they see this as like, we're different. So we can go do the exact same thing as everybody else, but because we're the ones doing it, it's different. But it's not different. You're just doing the exact same thing as everybody else. Ultimately, your message is stop valuing the things you value and value the things we value. Just believe us. It'll be better if you value the things we do. You see, liberty is very, very important to me. And if you would embrace liberty, it would be good for you. So you should just embrace liberty, and then everything will be better. All your problems will all be solved. But the natural response to that from someone should be and will be, what has it done in your life? You're not doing anything different or special. You're involved in an irrelevant political party. You're all caught up in political activism just like me. Like, these people, like, I don't want to be in political activism necessarily. Like, I just want to go vote. I don't want to dedicate my life to political activism. So if being converted into libertarianism means that I have to go become a political activist, well, it seems like liberty doesn't really hold anything for me. There isn't any benefit to it. So there's this conflation between liberty and the message of liberty. So when you're spreading the message of liberty, you aren't spreading liberty. That should be pretty obvious too. This isn't just a pedantic point. Like this is a significant issue here, that people talk about spreading liberty and they don't even have it in the first place. And they don't even think that they have it. If you talk to them, obviously they don't. They're like, oh, the state, everything's about the state, you know? Every bad thing that ever happens is the responsibility of the state. So if that's your posture, then you don't actually have liberty. So if you don't have it, you can't spread it to anybody. Okay, so you're spreading the message of liberty. So there's a simple way to look at this, because everyone wants to say, oh well, everyone can kind of do it their own way. Everyone can why don't we just all work on it and do our own thing at the same time together, which is a very libertarian perspective on it. But the nature of a political movement is that you can't all do your own thing at the same time together. That's not a political movement. There's no point in getting involved in a political party if you want to get involved in the political party so that you can do your own thing. Everyone can kind of do their own thing. The reason that a political party exists in the first place is that so like-minded people with an established ideology can collectively work, can collectively act to enforce their will on the rest of society. That's the purpose of a political party. So if you go into it to do something else, then you're just a bad political party. And I think a lot of people are like, okay, well, if the worst thing that happens is it just doesn't really have any effect, then, oh, well, there's no harm. People just kind of wasted their time or whatever. Well, for one thing, the time is the most important resource that you have. And there's this thing called opportunity cost that libertarians like to talk about. So if you're dedicating your time to one thing, that means by definition, you're not dedicating your time to something else. You can't do two things at one time. You can go back and forth between two things. Multitasking isn't possible. It's not biologically, physiologically possible. You can go back and forth between two things really fast, but you can't do two things at one time. And the way it works with humans is typically if you start trying to do two things at the same time, you're not going to do two things well, you're going to do two things badly. It's better to do one thing well and then do the next thing well. And that's really my position here with the political party, because I don't inherently oppose the idea of a political party or using a political party. That's an area where Vin and I differ. I don't see engaging with a political party as fundamentally immoral. I don't see enforcing one's will through politics necessarily as fundamentally immoral, because I think that enforcement of something has to happen. And I think self-defense can absolutely move into the political arena. Now, I don't think that everybody needs to be involved in it. I think there's a lot of people who agorism is the way to go. My position with agorism, though, is that if you're going to go the agorist route, then you have to stay out of politics altogether. Because part of being involved in politics is commentary on politics. When you're in a representative democracy, which is effectively what the system of government that reigns in the U.S. right now, then part of the nature of how the political scene works is people comment on it, and there's concentric circles going out. But if you're getting involved and you're commenting, you're basically involved in you are involved in activism. So now you're involved in politics. And I think that involving yourself in politics violates the principle of agorism. So I think that if people want to go that route, I think it's admirable. I think it's good. I think virtually everyone on the planet should be going that route right now. And that should be the only route that they ever take, with very few exceptions. Just put your head down and build. Hotep Jesus says, Hotep and build. Put your head down, build. Build something. Create it. Bring it into the world. Sell it to people. Get other people invested. Build a community around whatever it is you're selling. Take care of that community. Provide for the community. Protect them. Provide for their needs. Do whatever you need to care for them. That's the focus. This is an age-old model. This is the model for all human thriving. This is the model that has advanced humans out of poverty across the world time and again. That's the model. And theoretically, at least, there may come a time where, for the good of your organization, you need to participate in the political system to, say, get a regulation taken out, or to get some kind of a license so that you can act for it. I know that part of agorism is that you don't participate in the licensing system at all. But to me, I don't see the government as something that's so unique and special. It's just a thing that's there. So if to advance my business, I need to have a license, then whatever. Now, I'm not going to make myself dependent upon it. I'm going to have myself in a position where I control the income to the degree that if something goes wrong with that license, then I'm free and clear. But I don't think it's a moral issue. It's just it's a practical issue. Do I want to expose myself to that risk of being involved in this? Okay, well, I'll expose myself to the risk if I, at the same time, in parallel, I have the ability to manage that risk somehow. Everything about life, every step you take in a business is all about a risk. You're going to take a risk and you want to manage your downside. Sometimes you have to take big risks where there's massive downside risk. And ideally, you would avoid those. Those would be the ones that you minimize absolutely. But the thing is, some of the biggest risks have the biggest rewards. So you have to engage in them sometimes. I see some kind of political system as inevitable. It's going to be created. And saying that one should not exist is fine as an expression of just like an opinion. Okay, yeah, one shouldn't exist. But if you're going to try to prevent one from existing because it violates the NAP, for example, to prevent it from existing, are you going to force it not to exist? So you're forcing your will on theirs? To me, I think that going down this pathway is unproductive for the vast majority of people. The vast majority of people don't need to be concerned with the political system. Treat it as a constant. It's going to be there. There's going to be a political system, no matter what. If you want to change it, become someone worthy of changing it. Put yourself in a position where you can change it. Accumulate the resources to change it. Because see, to me, I have no problem with the idea of forcing a political system to not exist. If I owned property, if I owned a city, for example, and people wanted to create a communist party within that city and try to advocate for a collectively bargain or advocate for their rights or whatever, I have no problem with forcibly preventing that from happening. But you have to have gotten yourself to that position where you own that city, where you've owned that region. And I don't think that this is entirely utopian. I think it's plausible, and I think it's the route that we're going. Private ownership of cities, private ownership of counties, private ownership of regions. The reason I think that it's going that way, and part of the reason I say this is because I want to create pressure to make it go that way. But what I see with this Great Reset thing, with Klaus Schwab's stakeholder capitalism, where companies are not just responsible for their shareholders, but they're responsible for looking out for everybody who has a stake in their company, which turns out to be the entire planet. So every single company has an obligation to the entire planet. You should be able to see where this is going very clearly. This is a move to eventually make governments, representative governments, obsolete, to bypass them. I don't know exactly how they're going to do it. I'm guessing that the narrative is going to be something to the effect of that the government just can't be trusted anymore. That it's been corrupted and taken over by the right-wing radicals or whatever. We just can't get our agenda through. Look at this. We had Joe Biden was the president for 4 years and not a single gun law was passed, or whatever. They'll come up with some narrative for that, and they're going to say, these companies are going to step forward and say, we're going to take a more direct role in caring for this area and providing for this area. We're just going to bypass the government altogether. And I think that there's a lot of libertarians who are going to get sucked right into that because they're going to be like, oh, yeah, private ownership. Woo. Government. Yeah, get the government out of there. But what they've just done is they've removed even the pretense of existing at the will of their customer, at the will of their consumer. Now you're going to get private government, but it's not going to be a private government that you like. So seeing this coming, I want to get people in the business where we can start buying these areas. We can start creating our own private governments. There's all kinds of hurdles. There's all kinds of risks. There's all kinds of, I can hear people scoffing and saying, oh, there's not possible, whatever. Here's all these different reasons why the state would never allow that. The state will never allow it. What do you think is going to happen with your political party? If you don't think that the state would ever let you buy a region and govern it, they're sure as hell not going to let you take over anything with their political party. They're going to use you. They're going to use you as tools. You have to understand the concept of archetropism. Popular Liberty. He's in the chat. Archetropism. That should be the word of 2021. As Monica Perez said in a conversation with Pete Quinones, Free Man Beyond the Wall, as she said recently, she said something to the effect of, if taking down existing governments isn't going to usher in anarcho-capitalism, it's going to usher in global government. I was tweeting with someone this morning, and I said that I can't remember exactly how we phrased it, but basically that activism, political activism, is the lifeblood of the state, and especially activism against it. Because activism against it proves that it has enemies, which proves that it needs to exist. And not only that it needs to exist, but that it needs to be more powerful. It needs to reinforce itself because there's enemies coming trying to take it away. This is the thing that when people talk about they're spreading the message of liberty, people don't want your message. That's the thing, because of what your message means. The problem with, I can't say this enough times, people aren't rejecting the libertarian message because they haven't heard of it. They're rejecting it because they have heard of it. They haven't heard all the details and all the arguments. That's what people say, oh, how do you know that they haven't heard this argument for rah, 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 rah? I know that it doesn't matter because people don't make decisions based on arguments. People make decisions and then they find the argument to justify the decision. This is just how humans operate. There's a severe lack of understanding of behavioral science in the quote-unquote liberty movement. If you're trying to get your message to people, you need to sell them a message that they'll buy. And I hear all this. They say, oh, the Ron Paul movement. Look how many people it woke this guy, woke that up. Look at you. Didn't you come in through the Ron Paul movement? So you got woken up. Why can't someone else get woken up? Yeah. And I'm not in a position where I would say I have liberty the way people talk about it. I live in Southern California. I'm creating liberty. I'm moving to a point where I have more liberty than I did before. But it's a relative thing. Liberty, as is defined by the MiCaucs, by anybody in the Libertarian Party, liberty as you guys have defined it, you definitely don't have it. So being woken up was just someone telling you that you're enslaved. They weren't freeing you from your slavery. You have to free yourself from your slavery. And the way that people are talking about it, it's not going to happen. All you're doing is you're giving the state cause to amplify its efforts against libertarians. So one other thing I tweeted today, this got people kind of riled up. I said, the effect of the Ron Paul revolution is that the former director of the CIA went on national television and blamed libertarians for January 6th, calling them domestic terrorists. And people are like, well, how's that? That's such a stupid thing to say. How's that a responsibility of Ron Paul? Before the Ron Paul revolution, nobody gave a shit about libertarians. Nobody knew who they were. Now people know who they are, kind of. They're like, yeah, they're those really weird, radical wackos. Because people's perceptions are governed by the corporate press, by the school system. Those are the institutions you need to be undermining. Those are the institutions you need to be challenging. And you don't challenge them on their own platform. It's never going to be effective. You will never control that narrative. to control that narrative would require resources that are so crippling that it's not even, it wouldn't even make sense. It's not a value proposition anybody would take on. You can't control that message. So the effect of the Ron Paul revolution is that without the Ron Paul revolution, you don't have the director of the CIA going and calling libertarians domestic terrorists, because libertarian was popularized. But the effect of that, the nature of the libertarian message, is that having it popularized within a political context is a direct threat to the regime. And I've been talking to I've seen a lot of guys coming into my mentions talking about that, like they're like, oh yeah, they're threatened by us, puffing out their chest all cocky. Yeah, they think I'm a threat. They don't think you're a threat. They think you're an opportunity, because they can treat you as a threat. Do you know what the state does to to threats to it? You should be familiar with that. You will not advance the world you want to live in by positioning yourself as an opponent to the regime. Plain and simple. You can talk about it. If you're outside the political system, you can say and do whatever you want. They don't care. They're increasingly beginning to care. We're getting to the point where we're going to have to start talking in code. We already are there to a degree. But that was the effect of the Ron Paul revolution. What I'm trying to highlight here is that popularizing the message of liberty as it's currently constructed harms the liberty movement, because it's a message that undermines people's desire for the things that bring about liberty. The message to be advancing is, look how successful and wealthy and happy I am because I focused on the things that matter. This is the world that I want to live in. Wouldn't you like to live in that world too? You've got the cart before the horse. If you think now is the time to rally all of the activists together. There's a tremendous amount of arrogance in this. I think it's more ignorance, but it comes off as arrogance to other people. This is why people think libertarians are so insufferable. Because you're delivering a message that you go out and you talk to a bunch of people, they look at each other and they're like, this guy's so confident in himself and he's saying a bunch of insane shit. You're going to get a few people, and that's good. Those few people are good to have. But you're going to push off everybody else because they don't want that message. You're selling them something that they don't want. The average man does not want freedom. He just wants safety. I don't think people appreciate how many people there are in the United States. When people talk about we need to achieve a critical mass, and then we're going to push back the state. We're going to roll back the state when we get enough people bought into our ideas. Not going this route, you won't. See, society moves around the intolerant minority. The intolerant minority governs the rest of society. I don't remember if it was in that conversation I talked about kosher. That there's a small segment of the population that eats kosher. But virtually every single food item that you'll see has a designation on it about whether or not it's kosher. Because the people who eat kosher will not eat anything that is not kosher. But the people who don't eat kosher don't care. They'll eat anything. So it's the minority. It's the small, intolerant minority that governs the rest of society. But that minority has to be smart. They have to follow the actual effects of their actions and not just the intentions. There's a reason they say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The fact that you think what you're doing is spreading liberty doesn't mean it actually is. Look at the actual effects. Because of the Ron Paul revolution, lots of people learned what a libertarian is. And they learned that it's someone they don't like and that they don't want more of. If you're going the numbers game, this is what you have to contend with. You're the ones trying to reach the critical mass. You're not going to persuade away a regime, because the regime is the regime because they have a lockdown on persuasion. That's the definition of the regime, is the people who are the most persuasive. As soon as there's people who are more persuasive, that regime is cooked unless it adapts itself to incorporate the people who are more persuasive. And that's the cycle that follows throughout history. Regimes don't collapse very often. They shift to go with the people who are the most persuasive. But there is nothing that you could do with this libertarian message as it's currently constructed that's going to be persuasive to enough people to overcome the costs of trying to sell it through a political party. Because it's not that these things don't have costs. That's what people say, well, why can't you do your path and they do their path? It's not that them doing their path, what I'm highlighting with them is that the path that they're taking undermines their message. They're saying one thing and doing another. That's what I'm trying to highlight. That's what I'm trying to point out. And it's not because I want to persuade them. I don't think that I can persuade them because their minds are made up. Their hearts are set. This is the route that they're going, come hell or high water, because people don't want to backtrack, especially not publicly. When you've made big public statements, you're not going to backtrack. It takes sterner stuff than most people are made of to backtrack after major public statements like that. So people find out a way to maybe tweak themselves without backtrack. So I'm not expecting to persuade people, the people who are already committed. The people I'm trying to get are the people who haven't made up their minds yet, but who might get sucked in that direction. Because political activism is something you have to earn. If you're going to get involved in something like that, you better be able to afford it. And I don't just mean financially. I mean with the rest of your life. If the regime collapsed tomorrow, where would you be? What condition would you be in? If you wouldn't survive it and thrive from it, you have no business getting involved in political activism. Political activism isn't something that you just do because, I just don't have anything better to do. I guess maybe it is if you're like, I'm independently wealthy and control all the sources of all of my income and I've sold off my responsibilities and everything else and everything's running for me, so I guess I'll go get involved in politics. That's the person who needs to be involved in politics. The vast majority of people who are going to get involved in this take over the LP thing have no business wasting their time on a venture like that. There's the opportunity cost that you're spending your time on this when you could be spending your time on something that's more important. If you have a 9-to-5 job, you shouldn't be getting involved in a political activist movement. You should be getting out of that 9-to-5 job and controlling the source of your income. You should be making yourself immune from whatever the state does. Once you've done that, sure, get involved in political activism. But even then, like there's so many layers to this. Even then, do you care about doing the thing that's the most effective or just doing the thing that makes you feel good about yourself? If you just want to feel good about yourself and you don't care about the actual impacts of what you're doing, then fine, whatever, take the electoral politics route. But there's two different ways to get involved in politics. You can do electoral politics, which is the least effective, the least influential, and the most costly. Or you can get into lobbying. You can lobby for the removal of regulations. You can fund a campaign. Because it's the money that does it. Fund the guy who's going to get in there. And I don't mean give him $10. I mean bootstrap it. That's the big thing. So people talk about how, we're going to get in there, we're going to do this, that, the other thing. With a political movement, if you want to make things happen, if you're getting involved in politics, you will be dictated by the money. Who controls the money? As soon as you want to make something happen, the first thing that people do, okay, where's the money? Where's the money going to come from? Who's going to fund this? This is why politics is controlled by financial interests. We're in the middle of watching this TV show called Outlander. Really, really interesting. It's very dark, very difficult to get through some scenes in it. Yeah, not for the faint of heart. But I'm trying to make sure I don't give you too many spoilers here. There's a war. They're talking about a war that's building up. And it's the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. Like at the heart of all of the plans of it is who's going to pay for this war. It doesn't matter the justice of the cause. It doesn't matter how many people believe in it. What matters is who will pay for it. That's how politics still works today. If you want to get something done, someone's going to have to pay for it. And because money drives what happens with the state, whoever has the money is going to dictate what the state does. Right now, the libertarian interest isn't exactly backstopped by massive capital. Because of that, it will never be successful. Because the capital dictates the outcomes, not the wills of the majority, not the wills of a minority, not the will of anybody. Electoral politics is window dressing on the function of the actual state. Talking about going into a political party and, we're going to get the message out. It's not just that the message isn't going to sell either. If it did sell, it wouldn't matter. This idea that, we're going to take over the LP and we're going to use the LP to as an evangelistic platform and change hearts and minds and all that. That plan shows that you don't even understand the state you're up against, the nature of the state, because it doesn't respond to the will of its people. And I thought that's the whole point of the libertarian observation, that the problem with the state, one of the biggest problems with the state is that it doesn't respond to the will of the people. It oppresses the people. People want to be oppressed. They claim that they don't, but they ask for it. They seek it out. Because they'll put up with a lot as long as they don't have to be held responsible for their own actions. If you're selling responsibility to people, they ain't going to buy. Not if you need numbers. Now, if you're someone who has a message and you don't care how many people buy into it, if one person is enough, then you can sell responsibility. That's what Jordan Peterson did. He sold responsibility to a lot of people. Even his audience. He's one of the most famous people, has one of the largest audiences on the planet. Even his audience wouldn't turn the course of the state, wouldn't roll back the state if they wanted to. Not through the political means, not through a political party. It's just not the right venue for it. And there's failures at every level. And the reason people are like, why do you care? Why does it matter? Well, just let them do what they're going to do. Because ultimately, it might make what I'm trying to do harder. I have to distance myself from them, or as I get involved in bigger projects, having people who are of a libertarian bent, having the eye of Sauron toward us more because of some big, loud political party, that might be kind of inconvenient, kind of annoying. But ultimately, that's not that big of a deal. The thing that I care about is the fact that the vast majority of people who are going to be pulled into something like this, probably not even going to hear from them. They're going to be, maybe they're not on Twitter. They're just invisible. They're part of the invisible majority of people that nobody ever hears from. There's going to be a lot of them who are getting involved in this because they don't have anything better to do. And say all you want about, we're just trying to use it to spread the message. We don't care about anything else. You can say that until you're blue in the face. Everybody knows the reason you use a political party. Everybody knows the purpose for it. And a ton of people are going to get wrapped up in believing that the impossible could happen, believing that maybe there's a chance. And to keep people like whipped up with it, keep people really into it, you have to sell that. Like, you have to. People will lose interest otherwise. So to keep those numbers up, to keep the momentum, to keep the energy up, you have to sell the fact, maybe there's a chance. That's why when you hear Dave talk about it, he's not like, there's no chance that I'm going to win. He's like, well, it's probably not very likely, but because you have to keep that little faint bit of hope alive. I'm not faulting him for it. That's if you're gonna go that route, that's the route you have to go. Like, that's the way that's just the nature of the game. So the people who get wrapped up in that, it doesn't have to be a lot. It could be a minority of them. Those are the people that I care about, because they're going to get suckered into this. They're going to get pulled down that path. And this is what Cyprian and I were talking about, that when it becomes clear that all of this was for naught, that all of this was I don't think that all of it's going to be. I want to be careful with my words, because all along I've believed that they're going to be successful in taking over the LP. I believe that they're going to be successful in generating a lot of noise. I believe that they're going to be successful in getting spokespeople into significant slots. I believe all of that. And I think that it's going to be very easy for a lot of people to mistake activity for achievement. So this thing that I'm talking about is going to get pushed off for a while, but eventually disillusionment is going to set in. There's going to be people who genuinely think that there's going to be some big wins, that it's going to turn the course. There's going to be a big inflection point. They're going to keep holding out hope for it, waiting for it, waiting for it, waiting for it. And, I hope that I hope for their sake that something like that happens, because eventually people are going to get disillusioned. And I don't think that everyone's going to go out and, start going all Nicholas Cruz on people. I don't, that's not my biggest concern. My biggest concern is just the lost time, the opportunity cost, and the disillusionment and the depression and the black pills that will come from that. It's not the end of the world. It's been a big hullabaloo about it because everyone gets all excited and we all chatter about it and everything. It's not the end of the world, but it's going to have negative consequences on a lot of people. And I don't want to see those consequences happen. So I want to call it like I see it. I want to get as many people, I get the attention of as many people as I can who would be those people who would regret it later on. Even if to them it's just an inconvenience. It's like, man, that was such a waste of time and money. I wish I would have done something better with my time. Even to them. Because what's coming is going to start dividing people between those who are ready and those who aren't. As this regime collapses, no matter how long it's going to take, there's going to be a sharp divide beginning to spread between those who can absorb the impacts to the economy, the impacts, future lockdowns, all those kinds of things. There's going to be the people who can afford that and the people who can't. And a lot of people, the people who can't are going to be overrepresented in movements like this, because they're going to see this as, hey, this is our chance. I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to give my last penny. I'm going to do everything I can to try to make this happen, because this is our last chance, you guys. We got to make it happen. If this doesn't happen, oh boy, everything's downhill from here. That's going to happen with a lot of people. You could try to talk them out of it, and you're not gonna. Like that. If you think that I'm just talking out of my ass, I don't know what to tell you. We've seen this type of thing happen countless times, and we just watched a shadowy cabal step in and do completely unprecedented, egregious things to create the desired outcome. The stakes are being elevated. The stakes are rising. And we're very quickly getting to a point where being a political dissident is going to carry with it a lot more risks than it has in the past. This should be obvious to you. Everything that you're watching happen over the last year or so is a regime insulating itself for takeover. We're in the process of conquest. The United States is being conquered by a new regime that was embedded with the old regime. This is how every single revolution happens. We're in the process of a revolution right now. And things are going to start changing over the next several years. If people had been having this conversation at this scale 40 years ago, 20 to 40 years ago, it's possible that we'd be at a point where, for some people, there might be some utility in creating a political like if there was something, if you could get involved in a political party and you could say, here's where you should be. Like, hey guys, check it out. We've got this project over here. You know, we're taking over this plot of land, and we want to buy it out, and we're going to do it all above board, and we're going to have a new experiment, something like that. Like, if you had the infrastructure in place for being able to try to create your own polity and manage it somewhere, and that's why you're running, that's why you're getting involved in a political party, it wouldn't bother me. I wouldn't care. I wouldn't get involved with it, but I don't think it'd be the end of the world. I don't think it's the end of the world as it is, but this whole, like, we're going to try to we're going to get into this political party to try to take things over and spread this message and kickstart a revolution and all that kind of stuff. We're not years late. We're decades late on that. It was too late when Ron Paul did it. That's why the movement failed. Because it did fail. That's like the definition of the failure of a political movement. People say, oh, well, it woke me up. Okay, well, and it woke you up to what? The reality that 10 years later, 8 years later, we need to do it all over. 12 years later, we need to do it all over again. We need to do it again. We need to try to tweak around the edges and do it again. If that's the value of your message, hey, come join us. We have to do this thing. Everyone's got to get involved in doing this thing. Well, we hope it succeeds, but if it doesn't, that's the end of things. If your message is, hey, come join our movement, we can't succeed without you, you're in a Ponzi scheme. That's a Ponzi scheme. You're trying to get this critical mass of people. Oh, we're going to tip the scales. Tip the scales toward what? The state exists as it does because people want it. If they didn't want it, you wouldn't have to go get them. They'd be banging down your door. The state exists because people are asking for it, because they believe that it will solve problems for them, and they're willing to bear the consequences of it as long as those problems get solved, as long as it looks like someone's trying to solve them. And if you're coming to them with a message that says, hey, your thing sucks, this thing that you're getting involved in, it all sucks, stop caring about it, get rid of it, you don't need it, I don't know why you think that people are going to want to buy that. I don't know what incentive they have to buy that. You're not going to reach this critical mass. It's never going to happen. The critical mass that you'll attain is if you take the king pill. I don't care if you follow me. I don't care if you watch the show or participate in it. I don't care if nobody does. I don't care how big our audience is, except for the impact it may have. If you take the king pill and you take control of your life, you take control of your communities, and you treat the state as a constant. It is what it is. Build around it. It's going to collapse. It's not going to be here forever. Something's going to take its place. And the people who are futzing around with political parties today are not going to be the people who are prepared when it collapses. The people who will take its place, the people who will be successful in the long run, regardless of what happens, are the people who start preparing for it today. I know you guys mean well. I know that the people who want to take over the LP and they want to spread this message of liberty, I know that you guys mean well. But your message is fatally flawed. And you're engaged in a performative contradiction that people smell that. You have to sell people something that they want. And it has to be clear that it's affected your life. There's a lot of messages that you could sell where the consequence of accepting the message is that you come start selling it to other people. That doesn't work with the message of liberty in the context of the state. Say someone hears you, they're like, hey, you're like, I've got this message, libertarian, end the Fed. The state's the cause of all your problems. Minimum wage is racist, whatever. Minimum wage, whatever your arguments are. You go take them to people. They're like, okay, cool. I buy it. I get what you're saying. What now? What's your what now? What are people supposed to do? Are they supposed to come get involved in the political party with you? Where are they supposed to go? The reason they were getting involved in politics in the first place is because they cared about an issue. And they see politics as the best way to solve that problem. And not only that, they see an enemy. They're getting involved specifically because there's an enemy out there who's causing that problem. That's almost exclusively, that's the reason why people get involved in political activism in the first place. So if those people that you're trying to reach, if you don't have a message that solves their problem, and not just, let the market decide, that's not a solution. You are the market. Decide for them. Solve the problem for them. Give them a reason to stop going to the state for the solutions. I don't understand why this is such a difficult message for people. Oh, I do. It's because it's not sexy when people look at it from this side. It's not quick and fun and low overhead. It's easy to get involved in a political movement. It doesn't require anything. You go out, you get to pretend that you're, a really good person and you've got meaning and you're pursuing this and it feels good and you feel like you're the smartest, most ethical person in the room. You're really trying to do stuff that matters. This is that's the whole idea of libertarianism is that that's not a viable way to solve problems. People have taken issue with me saying, we're going to take over, quoting, we're going to take over a political party to tell people that they don't need a political party. That's a direct quote of Dave Smith. And I don't say it to harp on Dave. My desire isn't to harp on Dave. I want Dave to be good. I want him to be successful. I want him to deliver a message that's effective, that actually has a chance of moving the needle, of changing something going forward. That's what he said. And I think that it's even if it was a throwaway statement, I think it's telling That's what you're doing. That's what your message is. That's the MiCaucs message in a nutshell. We're taking over a political party to tell people that they don't need political parties. Well, then what do they need? If they don't need political parties, what do they need? Do you have something to direct them to that will solve their problem right now? That will take care of their enemy at the gates so they don't have to worry about it anymore? Because if you don't, then you're just insulting them. You're telling them to stop worrying about their thing and just don't worry, we're in control, but we're going to leave you alone. There's this concept called anarcho-tyranny. That's when you're responsible for the provision of statecraft in a given region, and you don't enforce the law, or you enforce the law arbitrarily. You don't enforce it in some areas, particularly like violent crimes. This is what's happening in the Bay Area. It's anarcho-tyranny. The state doesn't enforce like shoplifting laws. They don't enforce like trespassing and robbery and petty theft and all these different assault. They don't enforce any of these things. But, they're going to tax the bejesus out of you. And, I guarantee you they're writing lots of parking tickets and, all the other things, the things that the state has a distinct interest in that promote the state's interests, those they do. This is archotropism. This is a state fully realizing its essence. I said in the past that organized crime and the state need each other because organized crime needs crimes. They need something to be a crime. If it's not a crime, you can't have organized crime. So they need a state that's there that outlaws things, creates a black market, so that organized crime has an industry. At the same time, the state needs organized crime because the state needs a reason to exist. It needs to be able to protect people from boogeymen. So it's inevitable that on a long enough timeline, a state and organized crime are going to become one and the same. So threatening the well-being of the state is a dream come true. Perfect. An opportunity to level up, to accumulate more power to ourselves. We need to protect ourselves from these people who are coming. Look at these people. They're not it's like Donald Trump's thing. They're not coming after me. They're coming after you, and I'm in the way. That's the message of the state. So if you're trying to undermine the state to its face, you're doing its bidding. It wants you there. It actively wants you. That's one of the reasons why I have no doubts that the Mises Caucus, the LP, is going to get platformed. They have to have a boogeyman, and you're volunteering. You're volunteering to be the boogeyman, and you know what? Your message isn't powerful enough to overcome it. It's powerful enough to some people, but not to enough people to justify it. So people get it going down this path. They're volunteering to put a target on their back for relatively no payoff. That's martyring yourself for a cause that isn't worth it. Now, I don't think people are going to die necessarily. They might, but I'm not forecasting that. I'm not predicting that. But you're not going to make your movement more influential in the way that you want to. You're giving the state a boogeyman. You're giving them a reason to mass more power to themselves. As long as you're on podcasts, this type of thing, YouTube channels, you're not that much of a threat. They'll kind of be like, but people are going to be like, man. When you organize, when you start organizing and getting involved in a political party and getting all this energy, you're just injecting energy into the system. The system desperately needs energy. It runs on energy. It needs it desperately to stay afloat. If people just got disinterested and were like, I got better things to do, the game's on. You get a critical mass of that, of people that just don't care anymore because they've got better things to do. The state can't keep justifying getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Stalin and Hitler and Mao and all these guys, they weren't super murderous because they were dictators. They were super murderous because they were insecure dictators. They needed to insulate their position. There was people gunning for them. There were threats. They had to deal with those threats. That's why states get murderous. Totalitarian power doesn't automatically mean massive violence and corruption and murder. Those things don't inherently go together. It's when you have totalitarian power that's under attack, that's threatened. So if you're volunteering to be a threat, it shows me that you aren't sincere. You may think you are. You may have talked yourself into it, but you aren't sincere because you're not paying attention to the effects of your actions. All you care about is your intentions. This is why I say it's like it comes off as arrogance. This is why people don't like libertarians, because they like people, even normies, can understand the effects of this. Like they'll say that. They're like, if you just get rid of the state, warlords will take over. And this, smarmy response is like, well, that's kind of what we have now, isn't it? Yeah. I'm more comfortable with the warlord I know than the warlord I don't. Until the warlord I know becomes so intolerable. But obviously things aren't that intolerable now. People are tolerating it very well. Things that we see today as like great atrocities are nothing compared to great atrocities people have gone through in the past. Even one of the things that pisses me off the most in recent history is what happened to Ross Ulbricht. And even he has gotten it better than someone in his position would have gotten it in the past. There's many, many things about the world that are getting better and better and better. But it's like the stakes are rising at the same time. So there's greater and greater risk of things getting really, really bad. Like 1700s, let's say not 17, it's 1900. If you had a mass power outage, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. It would be an inconvenience. It'd be bad. It'd hurt some people. Not that big of a deal. If you have like a countrywide power outage now, it would be absolute mayhem in the space of hours. So we're much better off in some ways, and then we're much closer to the brink in other ways. I don't remember why I got down that chain of thought, but the people, I've gotten people that are talking about like, oh, you guys seem, whatever. Something like it makes us look bad, or we seem desperate, or, whatever. I don't remember what people are saying. I don't care about, for me at least, I don't care about the popular perception of me, the popular perception of this show. I care about the people who get it, the people who hear the message and respond to it. And they have been inundating me. I've heard from so many people in the last week who get it. Some of them, they just got it. Like it just clicked for them. I've had multiple people send me screenshots of them canceling their subscriptions to their donations to the MiCaucs, that kind of thing. I've had multiple people sending me that because they're like, I get it now. I get it that this is all activity without accomplishment. It's people trying to take a shortcut. It's people that don't want to do the deep work. They don't want to play the long game. They see this as a shortcut. Buy the time, get through till after 2024, then we'll get back to our other thing. Why? So you can be 3 years behind the curve? You're not going to be able to afford to be behind the curve very soon. What's happening right now is the middle class a middle class in a society is a rare thing. Most societies have an upper class and a lower class. That middle part there is a phenomenon that's occurred relatively briefly throughout American history. It's kind of a phenomenon that's sort of it's relatively new, and I don't think that it's natural. I don't think it really I don't think it'll really persist that long. But either way, even if it does, say there's something else that comes up and it does, that's me just kind of hypothesizing. What's a fact of the matter is that it's disappearing. And we're moving closer and closer to a much more of a two-tiered society. The people who are connected, the people who have wealth, power, and influence, the people who the state is an inconvenience to. It's not the end of the world. It's like it's a pain in the ass to have to write the tax check, but it's not crushing. It's like, man, this is so annoying. I think I'm going to move so I don't have to deal with this anymore. That's the position you want to be in. That's what I meant on the show when I said, I saw a few people highlight this, and I understand where they're coming from. When I said, your problem isn't that you oppose taxes, your problem is that you want more money. Now, people, like, in principle, they'll say, oh, no, I don't like it. I hate that I pay taxes. I don't want to pay taxes. If the state that existed did good things with your money, like, just objectively, like, if you felt like you were getting your money's worth with your taxes, you wouldn't care that you were taxed. You might want to go somewhere that taxes you less, but you wouldn't notice it. You'd be like, well, yeah, they tax me, but hey, look at everything that's great because of it. That doesn't happen because the incentive structure isn't there. But that highlights that it's not the taxation that people don't like. It's the taxation with the poor service for it. People are going to argue and say, oh, no, it's in principle. Even if I was getting great service, it's not voluntary. Whatever. Okay. Whatever. Either way, you need to get yourself to a position where the taxes are an inconvenience. Our tax bill this year is way bigger than we expected. And it sucks. It's annoying. It's a downside. It's not a downside to working for yourself. It kind of is. It's a downside to transitioning to working for yourself. In that transitionary period, there's an in-between spot where you're not making so much money that it's just like whatever, but you're making enough money that the tax bill is significant. But the answer to this isn't, abolish taxes. That's tilting at windmills. The answer isn't even something dialed down from that. The answer is make so much money that it's just annoying, and you can go wherever you want. You can pick which tax status you want to have. You can pick what tax rate you want to have. And then you're in a position where you can start to dictate what the tax rate is going to be. And that's where I have no ethical problem with people getting involved in the state for something like that. Lobbying for one thing or another to change something like that. I have no problem with that at all. Because the state is just an organization. It's an organization with a shitty business model. I want to change the business model. And to change the business model, you have to give it competition. You're not going to out-persuade it. You're not going to persuade the regime away. You have to out-compete the regime. This is that capitalism 101. People understand this. They're like, the problem with monopolies is that they have no incentive to provide good care. It's all these different things that are downstream of a monopoly. So what's the solution to the monopoly? Competition. You need competition. If the monopoly is going to try to enforce no competition, then trying to fight it seems like a pretty bad idea because it's a monopoly by definition. People are talking about how, it's going to come to where we're going to have to take up arms. No, you're not going to take up arms. If you're going to take up arms, you already would have. You're never going to take up arms. And if you do, it's going to be so you could just die right away and people might remember your name fondly. You're not going to change it by taking up arms. The way to solve the problem of the monopoly is to create a competing service provider. And I don't care what the hurdles are. Solve them. So the state won't let competition exist. Figure out a way to create it. Buy some lawyers. Dig into the fine print. Do whatever you need to create liberty, because liberty is not something you spread, it's something you create. It's something you take. You take it smartly. And ultimately, it can be something that's enforced, because that's all property rights are. Property rights are enforced liberty. But you have to get the property first. You're not going to be able to fight it away. You're not going to be able to take it by force. So you're going to have to take it with your brain. You're going to have to create the means to take that property. Then you can give it whatever rules you want. You'll have proven yourself worthy of it. But the vast majority of people don't need to be concerning themselves with that, because they will never have any impact on it. That's not how societies govern themselves. Societies are always governed by small numbers of elites. Right now, there are no elites to speak of that value this message, so the message isn't going to go anywhere. You need to buy some elites. You need wealthy, powerful people in your corner. People talk about how all the bankers they own everything. You know, the bankers have bought all the major companies and all that. So why not buy them from them? It seems impossible, seems difficult. That's not as difficult as what you're proposing. That's what I'm talking about the easy path. I'm talking about taking the easy path. You're trying to do it the hard way. Trying to mount an assault on the castle, hoping that people from within will abandon their posts and come fight with you. That's the hard way. The easy way is the king pill, Clockwork Industries, quoting, "Unless you have the power to take over the system, which none of us do, you gain power through individual responsibility, building wealth, power, and influence, preferably in a method you enjoy, then help others do the same thing. Family, friends, and build communities to prop each other up to weather the coming storm/collapse. Build autonomy. Practice agorism when applicable. Learn self-sufficiency and practical skills. Prepare for the worst. Hope for the best." My favorite sentence of all, you have to build security inside the system so when it falls, you can remain and rise from it. If you couldn't survive, this should be your easy metric here. If you couldn't survive the collapse of the United States right now, you have no business getting involved with the LP. You have higher priorities. You need to earn the right to get involved in something like that. Get yourself to the point where that's a luxury. Once you get to that point, you won't want to get involved. You'll realize that there's much better things to do with your time. Life can be very, very good right now if you're focused in the right areas, if you're doing the right thing. If you get yourself aligned with the fabric of reality, it'll start rewarding you. That's another way of saying that if you obey the will of God, then he will reward you. That's the nature of reality. Now, I'm sure that you guys have all been jamming on the comments here, so I'm going to try to catch up. One other thing I wanted to say. I wanted to address before I catch up on the comments, I wanted to address this predator thing that we were talking about. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. That wasn't, if I'd been on the show on my own, that's not a route I would have taken. I wouldn't have used that term the way that Cyprian used it. Part of that's because I'm just less confrontational than he is. And to me, going into it, my position was that I would prefer to try to persuade. Like I wanted to get in Dave's ear if we were going to talk about Dave, with anybody. I want to get in your ear and I want to try to persuade you. I don't want to come at you with a broadside. That's a stylistic thing. Because the fact of the matter, like I tried to highlight, I don't believe that Dave is a predator, but the archetype that he's embodying is predatory. And I think that even despite the fact that I wouldn't have taken the conversation that way, I think sometimes it's important to speak the truth forcefully, even, and accept the consequences as they come. And someone who doesn't hear the message inside, I texted someone right afterwards, and I said, I hope that Dave hears the message within the words. I don't expect him to. I don't think he will. And honestly, if I was in the same spot, I would probably take it personally. My ego would get into it as well. So I understand if he takes it personally and he gets upset and all that. Like I think it's an understandable response, because those are harsh words. But I don't think that they're untrue. And here's why. Because of what I said about the majority of people who are going to get involved in a movement like this are going to be people who can't afford it. The movement needs those people. It needs that energy. Without those people, it's not going to go anywhere. Like, you have to whip up. You're trying to get lots of attention. You have to get lots and lots of people involved. And the people who are going to get involved will disproportionately be the types of people who can't afford it, because those are the people who are lured to it because it seems easy. All you have to do is subscribe to this guy's show, share the podcast with people, and then just go tell people about all the stuff you care about, regardless of what they think. We get lots of conversations on the internet. And you get to tell yourself that you're doing a good thing. That's very, very alluring, especially to people who don't have something better to do. So they'll put everything else on hold and they'll get involved in this. They wouldn't do it if it wasn't for the people at the top calling for it and drawing them into it. And there are going to be people who don't understand this distinction that, oh, we're not actually trying to get anything. We're not trying to get elected. We're not trying to do like all this. We don't care about those things. We're just trying to message. We're just using this as an evangelistic thing. You can say that all you want. Lots of people are not going to buy it. It's not going to click for them. This is a political party. What do you use political parties for? Use it for political movement. What do you do a political movement for? Take power. Politics is power games. Politics and war, they're on a continuum. It's the same thing. It's two opposing sides. At the end of the day, friend-enemy distinction is the only one that matters. At the end of the day, it's two opposing sides fighting for dominance. And the question is, will it turn into actual fighting, or will it stay just rhetorical? And that line is getting blurred more and more. If people start talking about, we're going to have a rally, we're going to all get together in one place and protest or something like that, stay the hell away from that. Do not get involved in something like that, no matter who's asking you. That's not the path that you want to take. That is not the way. So I'm pretty confident, I feel very confident that the people at the top, including Dave, but anybody else who's leading the charge within this movement, I feel confident that their intent is not to be predatory, that they have good intentions, that that's their goal, to do good things. They have a benevolent purpose. But the cliche is a cliche for a reason, that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Because if all you're looking at is your intentions and not your impact, you're going to be led astray. Because it's easy to program someone's intentions and to draw them along by their intentions and lead them right over a cliff. So that's what's predatory about those positions. It's luring people in. It's pulling people in and saying, come dedicate your time and resources and social capital to this project. I I don't know another word. Manipulative. I don't know what else to call it. So ultimately, I wouldn't have used that word. I wouldn't have led the conversation that direction. But I don't think it's a bad thing that it went that way, because I think that it's true. And again, those are the people that I'm the most concerned about. Those are the people that don't go down that path. Just don't go that way. It's not worth it. Don't Fed post. There's more. There's lots more stuff to get involved in that don't require you to Fed post in real life or on the internet. That's that. Okay, so touched on that, and touched on that. Okay, let me get into these comments here. I'm sure that I'm never going to catch up. Holy cow. Okay, yeah, I'm going to have to come back through and read through these later. But I'm going to try to breeze through as fast as I can. There's a lot of you guys watching. It's good to have you guys here. Do me a favor. I'll say it again. Like this episode right now. We got some dislikes. I don't think we've ever had a dislike in the middle of the show before. Give them to me. I love them. Do me a favor. Like the show. Subscribe to the show. Share the show. We're going to have it on the podcatchers soon. I know I keep saying that. It's true. So for now, please like it, share it, subscribe to it, all that business. It says we're at 794 subscribers. I'll bet you that if I open that up, 798. We need 2 more. We'll hit 800. So get it out there. Get 2 more. Get 2 more for us. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. That's an inside joke. I think 1 person will get that. Appreciate that. And then for those of you who just chimed in, our sponsor today, I've got the link in the description, but our sponsor is Paloma Verde CBD. You can go there, use promo code KING. You get 25% off any order over $75. We really appreciate Carlos and Vanessa Abelar here. And Carlos was in the chat at least earlier. I don't know if he still is because I haven't gotten all the way down to the bottom. But so go ahead and please patronize our sponsor. We appreciate that. Okay. Yeah, also subscribe to Popular Liberty's channel and Mark Metz's Substack. Mark Metz is a really good guy. I've started talking to him on Twitter a little bit as well. I've met so many new people that it's I'm going to be having conversations for a very, very long time, and it's fun. I've met some really, really cool people. I got one yesterday that I need to reply to. I don't want to. I'll have to ask him if he would mind me reading some of the comment, but basically he said that from listening to this show, it was kind of a serendipitous timing, and I got him going back to church with his wife, and he's kind of had a spiritual revival in his own life, and he said that this show played a big part in it, and that was super, super humbling. I never thought when we started doing this, I never thought that would be the sort of effect that we'd be having. I didn't really get involved in doing this with Steven because I planned to start talking about religion and spirituality and that sort of thing. So to have it go that route was very cool. Okay, Vin is here to this is from way earlier when we were talking about agorism. He's here to educate me. So oh, okay. I guess I can't see the whole chat. It's gone so long that I can't even get to the top of it anymore. Okay, so Vin said, trying to find the beginning of the conversation. He said, most people have never read Konkin and don't know what the principle of agorism is. That's true. I haven't read Konkin. So I should probably be careful weighing in on it too much. But he said, agorism is a path to power. A good agorist should be engaged in political actions that increase state incompetence. I actually like that. The goal of agorism is to gain a monopoly and violence on your home and then expand it out from there until it is big enough that you're never alienated from that monopoly on violence. Agorism is the opposite of the LP because agorism is bottom up while the LP is top down. Now that, I need to chew on that. That's very interesting. I like that. We're going to talk about that some more. Reardon, first, there is no monopoly of violence. That is wrong. The state has a monopoly on the legal use of violence with the possible exception of self-defense. The mafia uses violence. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if you were replying to me or someone else. Scrolling down. Walt Disney wanted to establish his own city that he'd be the ruler of. Fair. Popular Liberty says the state is not a monopoly on legal violence. I can use it to defend myself and others from illegal violence as much as I want. They have a monopoly on aggression as a service. And I think, as I've tried to reason through this in the past, I think the best that you could hope for, because even the whole like mold bug patchwork thing, where you have like these little locales that at the state level, maybe county level, where you have a single, basically like the CEO of a cooperative that owns the region there, a joint stock corporation with a CEO that owns that region and provides services and everything. There has to be additional infrastructure or additional tech to incentivize people respecting your ownership of that area and not taking it over. And that's something that I think is really valuable to keep in mind, is that there aren't, at least as it is now, there aren't any solutions to this problem of corruption of power. What there are possible solutions, and it's kind of a perpetual engineering problem that, depending on your view of the world, is never going to be solved in this life. And that would be basically where my instinct is. Obviously, I'm relearning a lot of things right now, but my instinct would be that it's never going to be solved. The best you can do is solve whatever problems crop up in front of you. And ultimately getting involved in the political process would be something that I would be interested in if it held a direct impact on the interests of, first of all, my family, or as an extension from that, a business that I was involved in. So at the very least, I can't see avoiding the monopoly on violence on the monopoly on the legal use of violence, or the monopoly on aggression as a service, as you're always going to have a bigger guy on the block. There's always going to be someone who takes these, say you get a whole bunch of patchworks and you put them together, or you get a whole bunch of patchworks, someone's going to come through and put them together and try to take over other patchworks. So, you're dealing with the same political or the same engineering problem with that. So it's kind of like you just keep moving it up the chain, and you're going to continue having someone bigger and bigger and bigger that's going to try to mess with your solution. But that's why trying to start from the top is never going to work out. You have to build it up from the bottom, because you have to have a foundation that you're built upon, so you can continue to build on it. And if something gets taken out, you can go back down to that level in the foundation and start to build again. And part of the reason why, when people are like, oh, why don't you just let them do their thing? Because all of the people who are busy with the LP are people who are not busy solving these problems. And we need resources, financial resources, mental resources, physical resources in solving these problems. Now, perhaps it's a good thing. Maybe I should be thanking them for taking low-quality people away, so that these low-quality people aren't trying to get involved in solving these problems. We only have the best people. There's lots of ways you can look at this. There's bright sides on every corner. But I want to get more people's attention to try to solve these problems. I've heard a lot of people that are like, well, what's your proposal? For one thing, I've got an entire YouTube channel where we've sat here and come up with proposals and ideas and played with all these things. So if you haven't gone and watched all of our videos, then I don't want to hear from you. But this is a set of problems that needs a solution, and it needs people working on it. And if I can get people's attention, if I go get involved in some Twitter war with someone and I get larger accounts that are interacting with me, and someone else sees me, and as a consequence of that, they get exposed to these ideas, they can start solving those problems, that makes me happy. I don't have answers for all of these things. Sometimes I just have criticisms and I'm like, I see this problem and I don't know what the answer is. I've thought about it and I can't come up with it. Is there anybody who can start focusing on this and try to come up with the problem? Because I see where the shortcoming is, but I can't solve this problem on my own. That's how I see my role largely, is trying to connect the people who can solve the problems. I don't necessarily think I can solve them. And I don't think that these are problems that one person really can solve. It's a network of minds. We need a network of minds that are working on all these things. Okay. I'm going to have to scroll through here pretty fast because, yeah, I can't read these that fast as I'm going through. I can't, multitasking, can't multitask. Let me get all the way down here. I'm going to come back through here later and read all of these. Steven says, be sure to follow my non-confrontational friend Matthew on Twitter at RealKingPilled. Yes, please do. Build the Ark. I'm happy Matt is connected to Auron and AA. They're fantastic thinkers. Yeah, Auron McIntyre is a really good guy. His Twitter account's been blowing up as well, and he's very good at coming up with pithy little one-liners. And then AA is Academic Agent, I believe. I just know him as AA, and then King of Shergar on Twitter. But he's another guy who apparently I've been kind of just adjacent to him. I've been following on Twitter and just because I see his tweets every now and then, and so I started following him. But I don't know his whole thing very well, so I'm going to have to start going down that path and trying to see what he's talking about. But I've had a lot of people who've come in lately and said that we're thinking and talking about a lot of the same things. Okay, do any of you guys have any questions for me or anything else that you want to hear me address? I don't see anything here that is catching my eye immediately, but I've got a lot more comments to scroll through. So I'm going to come down to the bottom. And, oh yeah, get to 1,000 subscribers and we can start doing super chats, which would be cool. Does he have it written down somewhere? I would like to read his positions if they're out there. Steven, my proposal, step 1, don't make things way worse. There you go. Josh says, I think AA takes the dark path that Cyprian refers to. I could be mistaken, though. I need to find out what Cyprian replied to something, to my tweet about doing the show today, and he said he's very curious that he's following that, and he's very curious to see which of the two paths I take. And that's interesting. I wonder what the two paths are. Is the dark path, is that a reference to that? Get Aaron from Timeline Earth. I keep hearing about Timeline Earth, so apparently I need to check it out. All right, I'm going to hang out here for just a little bit more, guys, and see if anybody has any questions or anything. I don't think I have anything else I wanted to say on this subject. I can't think of anything else really. Like I said, I haven't gone back through and listened to the episode again, really. I've just kind of heard bits and pieces here and there. When I open it to go look at the comments on it, the comments are funny. The comments are very funny. I've gotten a kick out of them. Remember Wednesday night, going to do the roundtable on Counterflow with Buck Johnson. There'll be that, and then we're going to have another there'll be another episode with Pete Quinones on Free Man Beyond the Wall. We'll be doing that, continuing that conversation. Oh, go check out The Simple Life with Gary Collins. Another really good guy. I've had 2 interesting talks with him. We've talked about the Church of Woke, or wokeism, where it came from, its roots in Christianity, the way that it inverts Christianity in a lot of ways, and then what to expect going forward, how to avoid it, how to deal with it, that kind of thing. That's sort of what we talked about. So go check that out. Podcast is called The Simple Life. And then I've had a whole bunch of other requests from people, and I've got a lineup of people who I need to schedule stuff with, schedule interviews with. Once we get everything kicked off here, everything set up on the podcatchers, then we're going to start doing interviews on this show. We've got a whole list of people that we want to bring on and talk, and we have all kinds of schemes for how we want to troll and torment them. Or I should say, Mr. Messina has schemes for how he wants to troll and torment them. I'm just along for the ride. For now, he's got to get his hammy healed up. All right. Well, it seems like you guys are running out of steam in the comments here, and my voice is starting to get scratchy. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have anything else that you want us to cover or talk about, then don't hesitate. Shoot me a text on Twitter at RealKingPilled, or shoot me a tweet on Twitter, not a text. I just realized Steven says talks for 2 hours straight. I don't have much else to say. I just looked up and saw that it's been 2 hours. I was thinking it'd been like 45 minutes. So I guess I had a few things to say. But follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. Don't follow Mr. Messina on Twitter, known as Liberal Steve. Follow him on Twitter at Messina Inc. And then subscribe, share, like, go to palomaverdecbd.com. I think that was all the things. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and we should be live again on Thursday. So after Wednesday, the roundtable, we should be live here again on Thursday, and we'll see you guys then.